I call to order the April 16, 2024 special meeting of the Standing Bonding Subcommittee. The time is now 6 p.m. Ms. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Connors.
Here.
Barbosa. McNamara.
Here.
Simpson.
Here.
Gibson.
Here.
Smedley. Viloin Sabitra. Here. McNamara. Pavon.
Here.
Also seated this evening, you have Alderman Santiago and Alderman Sanchez. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. Tonight, the first item on the agenda is item number 1, to act on a report to the Common Council of the City of New Britain regarding a $2.5 million appropriation and bond authorization for the city's lead service line inventory replacement program. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the report go back to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay.
I have a motion to accept and refer with a favorable recommendation made by Alderwoman Boulogne Saavedra, seconded by Alderman Pabon. Before we get started with discussion, because there are a couple questions, is there anyone here who can present a little background information tonight on what we're voting on for the new members of the council?
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Just a quick background. Mr. Moriarty is here somewhere, so he should be down shortly to answer more in depth. But so the reason we're here is in August of last year, the council approved $2.5 million in order to apply for the state grant program and the DWSRF Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Since then, we found out we were going to be awarded it, so this is the next step. Is actually it's money that we have to put up front forward. So of the $2.5 million, 1.7, which is approximately 60%, will be a grant from the state of Connecticut. The other $700,000 or so is a loan at 2% interest for 20 years. 20 years. So that's why we're here tonight, so we could bond for that money, so we can put it up front.
Thank you very much. And now, at this point, I will turn it over for discussion and/or questions from council members.
Mr. Chair?
Boulogne Saavedra?
Hi, Mark. We're just starting the discussion. Anyone could answer this. I was talking to the chairman before the meeting started. I think some people would like to understand the relationship between the resolution that was passed last August and why we're here today. So obviously, no money was expended from that resolution.
Correct.
So can you tie the purpose of that resolution into what we're doing here tonight?
It's one of those programs where you have to pass the resolution saying that you will do it in order to apply for the program.
Thank you. Any further questions? Alderman McNamara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin, so this sort of works like a school bond where the city floats the bond and then gets almost totally reimbursed
Correct.
for that. The resolution makes reference to issuing the bond at $2.5 million in several places, and then it says that subsidies, grants and aid, federal, state support can be had for the projects to carry out the projects, and any balances left of the $2.5 million. What happens to that bond money once it's been authorized if it's not totally used?
I could let the finance professionals answer that.
Just so Daniel Braun from Shipman and Goodwin, how are you? So can you just repeat the last part of the question, just so I understand and answer it correctly with respect to the grant and the loan portion and the full authorization?
Yeah, sure. Like, I think there was one bonding action taken in 2023 for to give an example, $6.5 million.
Sure.
And it itemized several things specifically, and then about $3 million of it was not specified particularly. So I'm saying that if the federal subsidy, which I'm most interested in, comes through, where does that extra bond money go?
So the way the Clean Water Fund program works is issue, it works like a construction loan, right? So as the project progresses, you submit your expenses to the state, and they reimburse you for those. And a portion of it goes towards the subsidy, it comes out of the subsidy bucket, and another portion comes out of the loan bucket. And then when the project's complete, you have your total number. And so the portion that was from the loan portion, which is only up to 726 million, will then get rolled into that. Yeah, sorry, 1,000, oh boy.
We wish.
Sorry, guys. 726, 833. Well, then, that's the max that can be borrowed. And then that would be repaid over 20 years at 2%.
Well, I raise that, and I may have other questions, but I want to let others get in.
Sure.
Say, if there is additional bonding money unused, do we actually need the loan, and can we go after the subsidy, or do they come as a package?
Yeah, so as you submit your reimbursements for each project, it'll get allocated to the loan and to the grant portion. So if you were to only use half, if all of a sudden this was only, instead of a $2.5 million project, it was 1.25, right? That would still be, you would then reduce the grant amount and the loan amount by half. It's pro rata. So if the project in total is less, they will both get reduced. So you'd have a smaller loan, but you'd have a smaller grant. So they wouldn't just give you the federal grant. Does that answer your question?
Alderman Santiago?
So you're saying that even though we're bonding $2.5 million, but the grant is about 1.7, give or take, and then 738-ish for the loan. If we have to bond that much, even though the loan and the grant pretty much takes the cost?
Yeah, so unlike when we do a general obligation bond, like for the projects that you were referencing in 2023 that were authorized, here, the first step is something that they call an interim funding obligation, and it works like a construction loan. So it is authorized for the entire amount, but as you draw down on it, it's only that portion. So you wouldn't actually be paying back 2.5 million.
Question through you, Chair. What is the cost? Again, what is the cost so far? I mean, as in, I'm sure we had a bid for it. So what is the total cost that we know of now? Because I'm obviously, like, materials go up, go down.
Wasn't it around like 2.3? I don't have the exact figure. Maybe I thought I wrote down. I believe it's around 2.3 million. 2.3,560,000, 2,356,130, I believe, is the amount.
And now, is that part of the consultant fees too? Because I noticed that Smith, CDM Smith had.
Usually that's rolled in as a part of it too, because that's what the architect piece of it first before we do the construction.
So what is their cost?
I don't have that specifically on it.
All right. You mind having that for the council meeting?
Sure.
Anything else?
Alderman McNamara?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chairman, can somebody, on the subsidy and getting the subsidy and loan again, it's not automatic. We have to apply on a competitive basis for that?
No, they've already awarded it to us, this amount. So back
Okay.
in August when we did it, we didn't know if we'd get the full amount or how to get broken up. But also because it's debt, we have to go through the bonding subcommittee in order to put it on the city books. And also with the resolution, there's other verbiage for the IRS that, for taxable bonds and drinking water state revolving, that it's language that they need on the state in order to approve it and ultimately turn it into a PLO, a permanent loan obligation.
And that pertains to the loan and the subsidy?
Yeah, it's both put together. because you can't do one without the other on these.
And the State Clean Water Fund now lists New Britain as the eligible to go after it
For this project, yes.
for that project. I just want just a general question. Do you forecast, Jonathan, coming back to this council in this, in this, or actually, we're coming near the end of the fiscal year, or the next fiscal year with additional bonding requests?
For this specific one?
No, generally.
In general, I don't have that answer.
Okay. But, well, I do want to follow up with you, not as an aside, on the bond passed last year and the $6.5 million that was issued and where that money went.
6.5 million last year, or was it 5.7 million?
I think it was 6.5. Oh, you're right.
5.7.
You know, my math is fuzzy.
It's okay.
5.7 million.
5.7, that sounds right. And then the other one was homes for 70 million. I think it was April 26th of 23, but I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. Alderwoman Valencia-Vedra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman Santiago asked about the architect and how much. Whatever that number is, it's included in the 2.5. That wasn't an additional cost on top of the 2.5.
No, it has to be included
Okay.
with it.
So even when you break that down, it's part of the overall 2.5.
Yes, I believe so.
Now, maybe this is a question for Danielle. Loan versus grant.
Yes.
So when we bond for the money and start expending it, do we use all the grant money first and then the loan? How is that broken up between using the grant and the loan money?
Yeah, and so this program through the Clean Water Fund is a little different than a normal process for bonding or issuing notes. So the first step is the interim funding obligation, that's for the full amount, and there's a construction loan, right? So as you submit your invoices, it gets partitioned off. So they'll reimburse you for all of it, and they'll allocate a portion of it for the loan and a portion of it for the subsidy. And so what's good about that from a borrower's perspective is you're never paying 2% interest on the subsidy. You're just paying what you draw. And so if this project was stalled for any reason, or there was a supply chain issue or whatever, you don't have a pot of money that you're paying 2% on that's not being spent. You're only paying 2% as you spend it. So, and then when you're done with the project, the final amount, which will be less, will be repaid over 20 years at 2%.
Who are we submitting the reimbursement requests to?
The state.
Which agency? Is it OPM?
Department of Public Health,
Public Health? Okay.
DPH.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Valencia-Vedra. Alderman McNamara?
Since Mr. Moriarty is here, maybe he could give us a bit of overview on the EPA and the reason this is done, and how far along are we in complying with that lead service?
So we're doing this as a EPA mandate. We're required to, as every water agency is required to do investigations on all your services and determine which ones are lead. In an older city, it's more complicated. There's the investigation itself. We attended, Ray and I and a bunch of people attended this conference at the Aquadorf last month, and they were going through, because everybody's concerned about this, they have pretty tight timelines on the investigation part, which is where we are. We're just kind of really getting going on the investigation part. By the end of the year, I think we have to have, I don't know if we would be fully complete, but pretty close to complete with that. And then based on what you find, I mean, New London was pretty far ahead. They were the most far ahead, but they were spending $10 million on just, like, after you get through this investigation process on replacement. So, I mean, this is the investigation It's EPA required. We have no choice on this at all. So this is, it's, you can't say it's an unfunded funded mandate because they're helping out with this investigation, so that wouldn't be true. But we're obligated to get through this first part of the investigation right now. That's our task, so, and we're getting assistance in doing that.
Nothing to do with removing the lead, huh?
We're doing
Capital project.
we're doing an investigation. This is a
investigation.
citywide investigation for service lines.
Thank you. Any further questions, Alderman Pabon?
So this money is only going to be used to do the investigation, no changing of pipes or anything?
With this part, no, this is just purely an investigation and inventory.
Yeah, 'cause I found it kind of cheap if you have to start digging up all these properties. It's going to cost more than $2.5 million, ain't it?
I mean, yeah, if you have to, replacement would get to be an expensive item.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Alderwoman Bolan's Phaedra?
Is this also part of the little cards that were sent out where you were supposed to self-identify?
Yes.
Is that part of your investigation or
Yes.
self-identification process?
Yep. I mean, because some things, it's obviously based on age. There's some things that you can help determine what kind of laterals are based on when they were built and things like that, but it's not conclusive. So, I mean, it's like there's multiple means required, like involved.
So can you explain, I'm sorry to interrupt you, can you explain a little bit then, if it's not just the card that was mailed to us, what is this 2.5 actually
there's
buying
gonna-
us? What
there has
what
to-
does the investigation look
Yeah,
like?
there's going to be some physical digging and actually looking at lines. So it's not just office work or anything like that. A lot of this is field work, exposing some lines to get a sample. So there's a good amount of work involved in this. Like,
The council would like to stay updated on that
Yeah, go ahead.
investigatory part.
Thank you, Alderwoman Bolan's Phaedra. Alderman Simpson?
Would this inventory cover any residential or commercial property, or is this just focusing on particular uses, things like that? Particular parcels even?
no, it's citywide of lead service lines
Okay.
for all service lines.
Thank you. Alderman McNamara, and then Alderman Gibson.
And Mark, this is, you have an October deadline for this? You got time to do it?
I believe it's October. I don't have the exact date. I'm covering for Maria kind of last minute on this. I know a lot about it, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day.
October
intimately.
16th.
This year.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson.
Is this in part of prevention measure, such as preventing a major water crisis like in Flint, Michigan?
It really isn't. It is that, for sure. That's what brought this forward. I mean, that's the point of this. I don't think that there's a chance of a crisis in a lot of the communities. Like, we don't have a chance of a crisis, but regardless of what I think or people think about this requirement, it is a federal mandate, though, so we need to comply with it.
Thank you, Alderman Gibson. Alderman Santiago, one more?
Might be a crazy question. What happens after the reimbursement, the bond money? Where's that going to go? We putting it back to the,
I mean,
so, because we're bonding with the idea of reimbursing, what 1.7 is going to be reimbursed.
Yeah.
And then 7.3. So 7.3 obviously would be the part that we'll be still paying on the bond. So the other additional 1.7, where's that after we get it reimbursed? Is that going back into the city coffer, or is it going to go back as not a loan and,
I mean,
as a
that's
payment?
it.
Not you, I meant to
But that
finance.
money's an expense for our consulting costs.
Well, yeah, but because you're bonding, but again, we're bonding first initially for,
I'll answer. Can you say that again?
so we're bonding the 2.5 million, so that could cost, is upfront for that 1.7 million. And
Bond up to it, but we're not gonna take turn it off when I moved it. There we go. We will not be bonding for the full 2.5. What happens is it's a construction loan, so what happens is we're going to have interim funding from the state. As we pay a bill for a contractor, we send it on a monthly basis to the Department of Public Health. They reimburse us, or actually, I think they front us the money, as long as we show that we have the invoice from the vendor that has been approved. They pay us, then we pay the vendor. And so we do that each month, and when they're paying us back, they break it up between grant and loan. And so each month, there is a detail and a summary sheet they send us for it. And so at the end, once you complete the project that's approved, at the end, the interim finance turns into a permanent loan obligation, and that permanent loan obligation is just off the loan piece of the, is it 700,000, I want to say? The 1.7 versus the 700, it's just on up to that. So the real debt to the city would be the 700,000. But we have to approve the full piece because you can't have the loan without the grant the way this one's done. So does that make sense, or did I further confuse everyone?
What are the costs for executing this bond, in
The
your
co-
experience?
The
of
cost
this?
for executing it shouldn't be too much, maybe 50 to 100 for financing. It all depends, so.
Thank you. Any further questions? I think we've had a pretty great discussion tonight. Just to summarize, though, the 2.5 is being bonded, though that amount will not be the total amount that is financed pursuant to the discussions we had.
Yeah, it's more to put it on the budget than anything, because the real debt piece is the 700,000.
And that's a requirement.
And that's a requirement
right.
on it in order to get the grant piece as well.
Thank you. And, well, I got one more from Alderman Simpson.
Sorry, we had a question on a timeline. I was wondering, so the 1.7 million, this is a grant coming from
DPH.
DPH.
Under the program of Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and we have a handful of ones we've done this way, whether Elam, whether Batterson Park, whether, I can't think of the
So,
other.
so
often.
my question is, do those funds have an expiration date?
Do the funds have an expiration date?
Yeah, does the city have to use them by a certain date?
I think it would be a few years, but realistically, once we get the green light on it, we'd spend it, we'd want reimbursement on it, and just to be done with it.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alderman Simpson. Do I have any further discussion or questions on Alderwoman Belinda?
Just for clarity's sake, maybe bonds could be for a few years, but this project has a specific timeline. So we're going to bond for this project, and we have a deadline that's required. So, I mean, it's done when the deadline, and what is it, October of this year?
I think they were saying October,
Yeah.
yeah, so
So we're not going to be carrying this money over. This is very specific,
Yep.
as required by law. And then we're going to be done with it. And we'll know by the end of the year
yeah,
what we're obligated. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alderwoman Belinda Saavedra. Any further questions or discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the motion to refer with a favorable recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Belinda Saavedra, seconded by Alderman Gibson. Thank you all very much. Have a great night.